So, in what is the biggest shocker that honestly isn't that surprising, Brock Lesnar has officially retired from mixed martial arts. Honestly, I felt he wasn't deserving of a shot at the title, not in that situation. I think it's deplorable that he held up the entire division waiting for a possible shot at the title. I know people say, well, it progressed a little bit, but still everybody was having to wait and expecting him to eventually get involved. Maybe more details will come out. We'll find out it wasn't necessarily his fault, but it's just honestly, I felt it was posturing. It was him saying to the UFC or saying to the WWE, you know what, if you want to keep me, you got to pay me, and saying to the UFC, honestly, if you want to bring me back, you got to pay me. It was a big ploy to get the most bang for his buck, which again, I understand, I do get that, but again, from a standpoint of a fan of mixed martial arts, somebody who wants to see progress and see people who are dedicated to the sport, it just pissed me off. Like, I watched WrestleMania and I saw the whole, we're going to head to Las Vegas where we are ultimately respected or whatever that crap is. Nah, we don't care. We're done with you. Honestly, I don't think it would have been a good fight anyway. I don't think Brock Lesnar really had legitimately no chance beyond a puncher's chance of catching Cormier with one of those big fucking ham hooks and knocking him out. And honestly, that probably wasn't happening. So, whatever. No loss. I'm hoping Stipe gets the rematch. I think he definitely deserves a shot considering what he did as the heavyweight champion. So we'll see how that plays out. Welcome back to Kamikaze Overdrive MMA Predictions. As always, I am your host, Scott Johnson, and on this episode of the show, we are breaking down the upcoming UFC Fight Night 151, which will transpire north of the border up in my country, Canada. We're in Ottawa, Ontario, the capital of Canada, for those people needing a little geography lesson. We are featuring 6 main card fights, which I'll be breaking down for you on this episode of the show. All of my preliminary picks, as per usual, will be available at kamikazeoverdrive.net. Now, I am coming off back-to-back decent showings. I went 8-3 at Fight Night 149. I went 9-4 at Fight Night 150. UFC Fight Night 150 was heartbreaking. I was 9-3 going into the main event, and I had Jacare, and it just didn't work out. He lost that fight, which was terribly disappointing. Hermanson fought a very good fight and came away with the victory. Jacare, I felt, let some opportunities slip away early, and that put him in a bad spot late in that matchup. He was the only, of all my big plays, he was the only one who didn't hit. I had Sakai, who I felt didn't deserve the win. I had Sakai paired with Sandhagen in my gold play, which was huge. I had Souza paired with Carlos Esparza in my other gold play, so unfortunately that one did not come through. It was not a bad night. Obviously we can do better, but I feel like I'm finally turning the corner. Now, speaking of my Jacare pick, you've probably noticed I like to post and keep track. I have struggled through the last 8 main events. I am 3-5, and that's not acceptable when you can't win the high-profile fights. And I started thinking, what am I doing wrong here? And I find what I was doing was when I start breaking down the main card, I start with the first fight of the main card and work my way to the main event. Well, when I get to the main event, I'm almost burnt out. And not only that, I'm trying to not rush, but at least I'm on the cusp of getting to this aspect where I'm recording and then getting to post. So I feel like maybe I'm a little bit ahead of where I want to be, and not really my head's not in the game. I'm thinking beyond where I'm actually supposed to be thinking, which is predicting fights. So for this fight, I started with the main event and worked backwards, which again is logical, and probably a lot of you are thinking, yeah, stupid, you probably should have come up with that earlier. But we'll see if that has any impact. And we've got a hell of a main event. We've got a hell of a main card. My bet packs will be for sale. The subscription pack will probably save you $30 if you subscribe for the next 2 months. $15 for the bet pack overall. And follow me on Twitter at KO_predictions. Make sure you subscribe here on YouTube. Click the bell to get notifications as soon as I post videos. I have yet to miss an event since 2010, actually, when I started this shit show. But on that note, let's get to the first main card prediction. Fight number 1 of the main card takes place in the UFC's middleweight division as Ultimate Fighter winner Andrew Sanchez, 10-4, takes on the debuting TKO champion Marc-Andre Barriault with a current record of 11 wins and 1 loss. Barriault. So now Sanchez is coming off a win over Marcus Perez, snapped a 2-fight losing skid. Overall, he is 3-2 in the UFC. Now for Barriault, he is debuting. He's former TKO champion of promotion, coming out of Canada. He has won 8 consecutive bouts. He's coming off a win over Adam Hunter, who was temporarily linked to the UFC, but actually his contract got squashed. I believe it was a failed drug test before he actually got to fight. Physically, both guys 6'1", 1-inch reach advantage for Barriault, and he is the younger fighter by 2 years. Now, it's a debuting fighter, so it's very important to look at his record and see what he was bringing to the table. As I said, just a single loss, 8 wins by knockout, 3-1 record in decisions. He's gone 5 rounds on one occasion. Just 2 of his last 9 fights have finished in the first round, which means he's fighting longer fights, which means he's fighting decent caliber competition. Not always. Some people could say he's not good enough to finish early, but I like guys that go deeper in fights because that shows me that they're able to win more than just a flash knockout or 1 round and bust. His last 3 opponents are combined 23-11, so it's not terrible. It's not world-breaking, but it's certainly where he should be on the regional scene. Now, Barriault, he's tough. He's very tough. He likes to scrap. He likes to draw his opponents into a firefight and simply looks to be more durable and more tougher and survive more and ultimately be standing when they are not. He's got some decent pop in his hands, and if he hits the mat, and if he gets the opportunity to hit the mat, he's got some good ground and pound, and I believe no submissions on his record either. Now, for Sanchez, he's a very good wrestler. And just with his wrestling, he brings solid pressure, whether he's on the mat or in the clinch. His clinch-based offense is very effective. He's not going to smash guys in the clinch, but he's going to neutralize them. He's going to control them. He's going to hang on them. He's going to wear them down. And that's going to be a big factor in a long, grueling fight. Now, the issues with Andrew Sanchez has been that he fades. Against Ryan James, another Canadian, and against Anthony Smith, who's gone on to challenge the light heavyweight title. They survived the early onslaught from Andrew Sanchez. Both were losing the fights. They rallied. He faded. They finished him in the later stages of the fight. And that was certainly concerning, especially for a guy like James, who's not known to be a finisher. Now, this, as I said, raises concerns about his cardio. It raises concerns about his durability. If he pushes too hard early, will it cost him later in the matchup? So it's a case of better finish or you're in serious trouble. Now, I liked the way Sanchez was throwing combinations in his last fight. He was throwing better combinations, more economical strikes, and closing distance behind them. He was transitioning between fighting modes, clinch, wrestling, striking. Everything was kind of blending together much better. And now he's recently moved to TriStar prior to that matchup, so you see maybe they're making him a mixed martial artist, not just a station-to-station fighter. Now, if Sanchez starts to fight, Barriault absolutely has the power to get him out of there, to finish him off, and to walk away with his victory in his first UFC matchup. Conversely, I have seen the Canadians struggle with far less capable ground fighters, and quite honestly, Sanchez is easily the best wrestler he's faced to date in his career, and that can be a very difficult scenario. I like Sanchez to show more improvements after his move to TriStar, after cleaning some stuff up and having some confidence coming out of that last fight. He will utilize the clinch attack here to control Barriault on the wall. He will take him down. He will beat him up on the mat, control him there. Still, legit concern over the potential for a late stoppage for the Canadian to rally, but my prediction is Andrew Sanchez to defeat Marc-Andre Barriault I'm going to say by decision. I think he grinds him out. So Sanchez by decision. Main card matchup number 2 goes down in the UFC's heavyweight division as Walt Harris, I believe known as the Big Ticket, 11 wins and 7 defeats, takes on the undefeated 9-0 Sergey Spivak, coming into this for the first time fighting in the UFC. Now, Harris is coming off a split decision win over Andrei Arlovski that was turned no contest because he tested positive. Now, he was able to prove it was a tainted supplement, so his suspension was reduced to 4 months, so he's back in action here. And overall, he's 4-6 in the UFC, but you look at that record, it's not nearly as indicative of what he's capable of. He's got that no contest that came off there with having 5-6. He has a loss by disqualification in a fight he was well on his way to winning. He had the short notice step up to face Fabricio Verdum, which was certainly a fight he was over his head in, and then a split decision against Shamil Abdurrahimov. He could easily be in a much better spot with a little bit of luck going his way. Now, Spivak, he's debuting to replace Alexei Olenek, who stepped up to face Andrei Arlovski in Russia. He's undefeated fighting under the Ukraine at 9-0. He's got a couple recognizable names, Tony Lopez and Travis Fulton, those regional journeymen who have a ton of fights. I think Fulton's got over 200 matchups. Lopez has got a lot too. Not nearly on that level, but still, he's beat 2 experienced fighters. Physically, Harris 2 inches taller. Spivak is the younger man by 12 years, which is not always a good thing at heavyweight. Just being the younger man doesn't mean nearly as much because we've seen some guys with older with that experience, that development, and that growth certainly way in their favor. Now, Spivak, all of his wins have come by stoppage, 4 by knockout, 5 by submission, all but 1 in the first round. So right there, that's a red flag we've been keying on with a lot of debuting new fighters, early, quick fights. When you look at Lopez, 61-30, Fulton 255-54. So one fight shot, no, over 300 fights. So crazy, my math was off there. So 2 guys, experienced fighters, not very good fighters, guys who are, but still experienced guys. The other 2 recent foes have records of 2-7 and 11-12, and the guy that's 11-12 has 9 losses by knockout. So that's more indicative of who he's been fighting for the majority of his career. Now, Spivak loves to attack from the clinch, and he's got some pretty good knees, and he throws a lot of them, and he'll work some elbows in as well. Does a good job of backing his opponent up and hammering on them. He's often looking to lock up with a body lock, change levels for a takedown, initiate that opportunity to take the fight to the ground. And if he does get to the ground, he's got good ground and pound, he's got good submissions. At distance, he's got power in his hands. He mixes in a quick right hand. Will mix in some knees at range, and he maintains a decent pace. But again, we've only seen him operate over 5 minutes or less in almost all of his fights. Now, you look at Harris. Walt Harris has 11 wins by knockout. All of his wins have come by knockout, disregarding the decision with Arjan Arlovski, which was certainly a step in the right direction. Now, you look at what we're seeing, the win over Arlovski over 3 rounds. Even though it came to no contest, we take it for analysis purposes. We look at it for what it was. He finished Daniel Spitz at the end of the second round. Chase Sherman, he finished midway through the second round. He, at one point, was a guy who was one round or bust. If you got out of the first round, he was in trouble, and we've seen him develop into a more patient, more mature fighter, and that's huge. His cardio still remains an issue. He needs to find that balance between cardio and activity, power and pace, if you will. I felt the Arlovski fight could have gone either way, and that was certainly concerning for Andre, who just got screwed in his last fight. He got screwed in a couple of matchups. But, yeah, Harris is certainly developing as a fighter. Now, he's got decent takedown defense, which is essential. It's not really tested for Verdum, put him on his back and submit him with relative ease. And ultimately in this fight, Harris cannot afford to be on his back. That puts Spivak in a position he's very, very comfortable in and can do a lot of damage from. Now, as I said, I like the way that Harris has become a more patient fighter. I'd like to see him add more impact into his offense with the ability to maintain it over a full 3 rounds. That way he can get a guy out of there with a couple shot strikes, or keep it up for an entire fight and not have a drop-off in performance. I believe he's progressing in the right direction. Again, the concern with Spivak is he's debuting. All fights have ended by finish. Only 1 fight out of the first round. He's faced lesser competition. He's had limited to no adversity. There are also concerns for the regional heavyweight scene. Often you are fighting blown-up light heavyweights or even blown-up middleweights, guys that just don't want to cut weight. And then you come to the UFC and you are facing legit heavyweights that are either the same size as you or bigger, and Harris is the bigger man, and that can be a major issue. In this fight, look for Harris to utilize his size and movement to defend those early takedowns and work toward extending this fight into an area that Spivak is simply not comfortable with. I think Sergey needs an early finish, or he will be out of his element, out of his comfort zone. Most guys beat Harris by looking to extend him beyond the first round. That is not something Sergey is going to do. And if Sergey goes for that early finish and can't get it, he'll be in trouble. I think Harris will control the distance with striking, land more, keep Spivak on his back foot. Eventually, Harris will find home for the most power punches, maybe as Sergey starts to slow down. Possibly some counters when Sergey overextends himself, looking to close the distance. And my prediction is Walt Harris to defeat Sergey Spivak by TKO. Going from the big guys down to the little guys, we're in the UFC's bantamweight division as Ultimate Fighter winner and Canada's own undefeated Brad Katona takes on the 8-4 Merab Dabish-Vili. Now, the Canadian Katona is 2-0 in the UFC. He's coming off his first non-Ultimate Fighter victory, defeating Matthew Lopez by decision. For Dabish-Vili, he is 1-2 in the UFC. He started with a split decision defeat in controversial fashion, and then had that controversial submission loss to Ricky Simone, and then he went on to beat Terrion Ware by decision in his most recent appearance. Both guys are 5'6". Dabish-Vili will have a 3-inch reach advantage, and they are the same age. Now, there's kind of an interesting note to look at here. These guys were a part of a scenario that was very similar. They weren't involved directly, but they were each in a similar scenario in their own fights. Dabish-Vili lost to Ricky Simone with a submission at the bell, in which Dabish-Vili was choked out when the bell hit, and they realized it after the fact and awarded the fight to his opponent. For Katona, he scored a similar submission against Matthew Lopez, tapping him out or submitting him at the bell, and then when he let go, Lopez was pretty much out of it. He was unable to stand up, wobbling all over the basically using his head for balance. But they ultimately put the fight to decision. So very similar situations for both these guys coming into this fight. And that they've been a part of. For Dabish-Vili, fights have come down to one key element for his overall game, and that's his takedowns, and more importantly, how effective his top control is. Versus Frankie Saenz, he scored 11 takedowns, but he couldn't hold him down long enough to really make it count, and he lost the decision. Against Simone, he scored 6, and still not a dominant top control time. Ultimately lost that matchup via submission. But against Terrion Ware, he completed 5 takedowns and had a lot more success holding him down and racking up points. But at the same time, Terrion Ware has been a guy who's been taken down a lot in his previous fights, so he has a track record of struggling with aggressive wrestlers. It's almost like a stylistic nightmare for him and a dream for Dabish-Vili. Now, for Katona, he landed 2 takedowns to debut, but more importantly, against Matthew Lopez, he gave up 4 takedowns. Now, it's hard to say, based on the track records, that Dabish-Vili's not going to land his share of takedowns. But again, will they be enough by themselves to win a fight? That's what it comes down to. Now, when he fought Terrion Ware, he was incredibly aggressive. He
was throwing strikes and attacking takedowns with relative, good cohesion. He was catching kicks and then orchestrating a trip to complete the takedown, changing levels effectively. And once he got on top, he was staying relatively active. That's good. And I said Katona was taken down by Lopez, but he was very active off his back, landing some nasty elbow strikes. On takedown number 2, he used his butterfly hooks and scooted his hips back very effectively, created separation, got back to his feet. Not instantly, but very quickly. He's been very good at getting vertical when taken off his feet, at least in that matchup. Now, Katona, he's still in the development stage of his career. He's the same age as Dvalishvili, but he's working to grow. He's a little earlier in his career, and as far as I see Merab, he is much more set in his ways. He comes from a wrestling background. He is stationed in a wrestling-based attack, and I imagine we're not going to see him transition from that too far, at least with success. Now, Katona's got some solid striking. He's more technical than his opponent in this matchup, but he needs to make that vertical time count. He throws with movement and pretty good snap on his punches. He's not a big power, but he's got good snap on his punches. He's got some nice counter combinations and lots of feints that are going to force reactions. And against Dabish-Vili, a guy who likes to overextend and really drive on takedowns, they're going to force him to make some mistakes. Again, as I said before, this fight comes down to how effective Dabish-Vili is from top position. I like Katona's activity off his back and ability to get back up to replicate some of those issues Merab had before, where he was scoring takedowns but not making it count. Brad, he should have a market advantage on the feet, landing volume and more accurate strikes. I expect to see more of Katona as far as development is concerned, possibly improve takedown defense. Again, a good experience last time out, possibly improve striking. It's also worth noting he's fighting at home, which will be key for him. He'll be fired up, he'll be ready to go. And if this fight comes down to a close decision that's not cut and dry, look for the Canadian to possibly emerge with a little bit of hometown cooking. Again, you don't like to back that, but at the same time, you recognize it is a legitimate part of this sport. Dabish-Vili, that last win, his first UFC win, takes a lot of the pressure off. He was fighting for his UFC career against Ware. He was a fighter that has struggled. He wears 0-4 in the UFC. I don't think Dabish-Vili will be quite as urgent. In fact, he'll probably breathe and take a little bit of, sit back just a little bit. And this is not nearly as good a stylistic matchup as the Ware fight was. Katona, I think he's going to attack off his back. He's going to get up. He's going to do more on his feet. It's going to be a close matchup. And my prediction is Brad Katona to defeat Merab Dabish-Vili by decision, possibly split when it's all said and done. And now we've got ourselves a bit of a barn burner. We're in the UFC's featherweight division as the 10th ranked Cub Swanson, 25-10-0, takes on Hurricane Shane Burgos with an impressive 11-1 record. Now, Burgos is coming off a armbar submission victory over Kurt Holobaugh. He rebounded from his first career loss against Calvin Kattar. He is 4-1 inside the octagon. For Cub Swanson, he is another good fighter that has just fallen short of a shot at the title over his career. You look at his last 3 losses, he's currently on a 3-fight losing streak. Brian Ortega, Frankie Edgar, and Renato Moicano. He had won 4 previous to that, but that is some murderer's fucking row of featherweights. Tough opposition. Burgos, 3 inches taller, of a 5-inch reach advantage, and he's 8 years younger, so all things favoring him. Cub's been out of action for 9 months. Now, Swanson has been in the hunt for a number of years, but he can't break that ceiling. You look at the guys that have beat him. The current champion, Max Holloway. The former lightweight champion and contender, Frankie Edgar. The former title challenger, Brian Ortega, Renato Moicano, and Ricardo Lamas. All guys that are... Moicano's the only guy that hasn't fought for a title in that group. So he has a 3-fight losing streak for Swanson, and we have seen a lot of fighters come into matchups on a 3-fight losing streak. It impacts the way they're viewed. It impacts the line, and they're in a slump. They've been written off, and you look at Swanson, you go, you fought 3 of the toughest guys in the division. The only 2 other guys you can work into that equation, maybe Max Holloway, maybe Jose Aldo, but he's fought some elite level competition, and he's lost to him. Now he's taking a step back. You have to expect a better performance here, and he's fighting again for his UFC career. For Burgos, he looked good early in his UFC run, but the Kattar fight definitely took some of the shine off of him, and so did the Kurt Holobaugh matchup in a fight where, actually, before we even talk about that, this is actually interesting. Similar to the last matchup, both guys are coming off similar scenarios. Both suffered knockdowns, but in Shane's situation, he got knocked down and scored a submission on Holobaugh. Swanson, he got knocked down and got submitted in the aftermath by Moicano. So both guys have similarities there. But again, Burgos hasn't looked quite as good in his last 2 matchups. He's been hurt a couple of times, and while he has good striking, it seems like he's vulnerable defensively. Swanson's a very good striker, throws some unorthodox capoeira techniques as well. He's got power. He's also pretty darn durable, even though he did get dropped in his last matchup. He got the better of Jeremy Stevens over 5 rounds. He went the distance with Duho Choi in a crazy brawl and took that one. He landed over 200 significant strikes against Artem Lobov over 5 rounds. This guy's been through some wars, and he's come out on top. I'm not sure Burgos can hold up if this degenerates into a wild brawl. He's got power, yes. He holds his hands low, his chin is up, and he can be hurt. Burgos does have 5 submission wins. He showed his skills against Holobaugh, and Cub can be submitted. That being said, Burgos not really a guy who's showcased a lot of his wrestling, and he will most likely need a knockdown in this fight to get the fight to the ground. I give the edge to Cub in experience, and the scenario with him coming in on 3 losses certainly favors him. His back is against the wall. He's being written off a little bit here, and he needs a victory. Burgos has not looked great of late and might not have a ton of confidence on the feet, as all things considered, a knockout loss and a big knockdown. I think Cub drags him into a war, outguns him, might even hurt him, but gets the better of this fight over 3 rounds. And my prediction is Cub Swanson to defeat Shane Burgos, probably by decision, potentially by knockout. But either way, Swanson's walking out of this with a victory. In the co-main event of the evening, we're in the UFC's middleweight division as Derek Brunson, where they currently ranked 8th in the division, holding a record of 18 wins and 7 losses, takes on the 16-2, 13th ranked Elias Theodorou, affectionately known as the Spartan. Now, this is a home game for Theodorou. He is fighting. He's from Toronto, fighting in Ottawa, so same province. He has won 3 in a row coming to this. This is his chance to crack the top part of the rankings. He's ranked, but he gets his opportunity here. Brunson comes into this having lost back-to-back fights in 4 of his last 6. But again, similar to Cub Swanson, you look at the guys he's lost to. The current interim champion, Israel Adesanya, the former Strikeforce champion, Jacare Souza, the former middleweight champion and one of the greatest fighters of all time, Anderson Silva, and the current reigning champion, Robert Whittaker. That's 3 UFC champs and 1 Strikeforce champ. That's a high level of opposition. His wins in the span against former champion Lyoto Machida and all-around nice guy and durable as fuck Dan Kelly. Now, both guys are 6'1", 2-inch reach advantage for the American, but Elias is the younger man by 4 years. Now, Brunson's fought in enemy territory before. He's fought 3 times, essentially. He's 2-1. He beat Machida in Brazil, he beat Kelly in New Zealand, and he lost to Whittaker in Australia. Elias is 5-0 fighting at home in Canada. He's 12 in the UFC. He's 12-0 for his career fighting on home soil, so certainly that bodes well for him. Theodorou is also 9-2 in decisions, with just 2 UFC finishes, which came early in his career. His decision history currently could be a factor, considering he's fighting at home and fighting a guy who, if he goes decision, doesn't have a great track record. So we could see a little bit of that home cooking for Theodorou, and we have certainly seen that in the past. Now, Elias has an odd style, and he's Canadian. I'm not a huge fan. He never sits down on his punches or his kicks. He throws a lot of ineffectual volume, and he can keep it up for a full fight, and he gets credit for the impact that I don't think he really delivers. I'm just not impressed with his overall output. Now, Brunson, he tends to be the other way. He likes to wait and then bull rush and swarm his opposition with massive power. So what scenario wins out here? If Brunson goes for early and can't get the finish, he tires and can get countered and gets knocked out and maybe overextends himself and gets finished. Either way, it's not a good thing when he can't get him out of there quickly if he goes for it. So Elias, he could absolutely outwork him. He could survive the first round, even the first half round, and then just chip away and just win a fight, a gift decision against an opponent who just can't get to him, is just too exhausted to keep pushing. I don't think Theodorou has the power to put Brunson down, and even though Brunson's been a little bit chinny throughout his career, he's been hurt on multiple occasions, I just don't think Theodorou has that punching power to get him out of there. Unless Brunson absolutely gasses, and it's just more if he can't stop the ground and pound through sheer exhaustion. Now, we have seen Elias hurt a couple of times. Anders hurt him, which tells me that a more capable knockout artist could complete the job, and Brunson is just that. Elias is durable, but that's only going to carry you so far. We've seen him beat up in fights. Thiago Santos one comes to my right. Santos upset him in a huge upset at the time. I really liked that one. If Brunson lands flush early in this fight, or even at any point in this fight, he could put him down. Elias has utilized the clinch a lot, and he's done it fairly effectively to grind opponents down, to really slow that fight down. He's worked towards takedowns from that position with mixed results. He's not going to have that advantage here. He's not going to be able to clinch Derek Brunson up and out-grapple him. Brunson's a much better wrestler and more effective in that position. Elias gave up way too much ground against Eric Anders and could have lost the decision. I had Anders in that fight, and I thought he could have won a decision there. He didn't pull the trigger enough and didn't land enough. That's what it came down to, but Elias was backtracking way too much. You can't backpedal against Brunson. He's just going to come forward, cover that distance, and eat him up. I don't see Theodorou being on Brunson's level, and I'm not a Brunson fan either. But stylistically, I think this is a good fight for him. Elias will back up. Brunson will use his speed and distance, cover that distance very quickly that Elias usually likes to work from. And my prediction is Derek Brunson to defeat Elias Theodorou by knockout. Finally, in the main event of the evening, we're in the UFC's lightweight division as the 4th-ranked Raging Iaquinta, 14-4-1, takes in the 8th-ranked Donald Cowboy Cerrone, the current record of 35 wins, 11 losses, and won no contest. Now, Cerrone returned to the lightweight division in his last fight for the first time since 2015. It was his 2015 title fight loss against Rafael dos Anjos that spurred his movement to the 170-pound division. It was a TKO victory over Alexander Hernandez, a very big win. He has won 3 of his last 4. For Iaquinta, he has won 6 of 7, including his upset win over Kevin Lee. His only loss being that short-notice interim title fight against Khabib Nurmagomedov. And he's been a little more active in recent years now. He's trying to get back going, where he had a bit of a layoff, which was concerning and kind of seemed to derail his momentum. Cerrone's 4 years older than Al. He's 4 inches taller. He'll have a 3-inch reach advantage as well. Now, at lightweight in the UFC, Cerrone is a very impressive 16-4. His losses have come twice against Rafael dos Anjos, former champion, against Anthony Pettis, former champion, and against Nate Diaz, just one of the top guys in the division at the time. That's an impressive run. Is Iaquinta championship material? Where does he fall into that equation? He certainly put up a good fight against Lee, put up a good fight against Nurmagomedov. Where does he fit? Cerrone's coming off a win over a very young, aggressive fighter that hadn't faced much adversity, and Cerrone was having trouble early, but just his experience allowed him to kind of corral the fight, no pun intended, and to get things back under control and eventually turned in his favor. He beat Perry at welterweight, a guy who rushed and got caught in a submission. Iaquinta is a much more measured fighter. He's coming off back-to-back performances that were big experience for him, offered a lot of development and a lot of growth, and that should benefit him coming into this. Now, when you look at what Iaquinta has shown us, in the Lee fight, it was an impressive fight. He had nothing to lose. Not nothing to lose, but he was coming in as a bit of the underdog, as a guy not considered on Lee's level. Against Nurmagomedov, it was a last-second fight. Most people expected him to get the doors blown off him, and again, not a lot to lose. Now and they were both fighters that were, wanted him on the mat, and they kind of had, maybe not Lee so much, but they still had very straightforward prerogatives. Now Al is facing a much more diverse fighter in Donald Cerrone, and he's got a lot on the line. He's coming in as the slight favorite. He's coming in as the guy with a lot to lose. He's the higher-ranked fighter. He's on the cusp of a title shot, potentially. How does he fare with the pressure on him? How does he fare in this spot? We also know Cerrone's had some issues with coming up short in big fights, and that's definitely concerning. Now, Al has good boxing. He's got good head movement and footwork. He's got some decent power, and he can maintain that output over 5 rounds. He should have the edge in speed. But for Donald Cerrone, he's the more diverse striker. He throws punches, kicks, knees, elbows. He has the length advantage as well, which will help him to deal with that speed of Al Iaquinta. Al needs to use that speed and that movement to close the distance. He needs to be careful of Cerrone's counter knee strikes, though. They are very effective. We saw him hurt Hernandez. When Hernandez started, kind of coming in quickly, Cerrone just started firing him up the middle and cracking him. And if he lands one on Al, that could be a major shift in this matchup. It certainly turned the Hernandez fight. Cerrone is 0-3 in 5-round fights when they go that far. He's 8-6 in decisions. He starts to slow down a little bit. But, he also can do a lot of damage, especially if he can compromise his opponents early. You've also seen him come back, have a bit of slow starts at times, and then rally back from it. So he's a bit of a mixed bag. He's a veteran fighter who's done a lot of things. Al has gone 5 rounds in back-to-back fights and is 6-1 in decisions, so that's worth noting as well. Cerrone's chin and body are certainly concerns. Al's never been knocked out, but we've seen him hurt before. Jorge Masvidal nearly finished him. So it's both guys can be, I think they both can be put down. We know Cerrone has been. I think Al Iaquinta certainly can as well. But I think this fight comes down to Cerrone's wrestling. Cerrone's wrestling is underrated. He took Hernandez down. He utilized that to, again, change the face of the fight. He's a very long and very good grappler. If you make a mistake, he is going to submit you and put you in a world of hurt. Iaquinta did get taken down by Kevin Lee, got his back taken, and he's been submitted 3 times for his career, so his submission defense isn't awesome. And I know Nurmagomedov took him down as well, but he takes on everybody. Lee had his best moments when he took him down. And I think a lot of people are going to expect this fight to be decided on the feet. And again, it could be, I could see it, but I see it ending on the ground. I see Cerrone maybe getting Al drawn into that. Okay, you're in the comfort zone, you're going to stand and trade with me on the feet, and boom, change levels. And he's going to use that variety to keep him guessing and eventually put Al on the mat. Maybe he might hurt him first, and he could hurt him on the feet before he even gets to this stage. But I think ultimately we're going to see Cerrone get Al on the ground. He's going to eventually work to his back, and my prediction is Donald Cowboy Cerrone to defeat Al Iaquinta by submission. So those are my 6 main card predictions for UFC Fight Night 151. All of my preliminary picks, as per usual, available at kamikazeoverdrive.net. I'm coming off a good showing, a couple back-to-back shows where I started to turn it around, and hopefully let's keep it going. I'm trying to snap that main event losing streak, so we'll see if my slight alteration to how I break fights down and how I go about doing it makes a difference here. All of my, I already said this, my bet packs will be available for $15, or you can subscribe and save up to $30, I believe it'll be. Make sure you click subscribe. Make sure you like this video. Again, greatly appreciate all the support. You can follow me on Twitter at KO_predictions, and you can contact me through my website if you have any questions, or through Facebook as well. That's all for now, guys. Take care, and go Bruins go. We got a big game coming up tomorrow night. We need to win it, even that series of 2 against the Columbus Blue Jackets. Talk to you soon. Bye.